Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to our ProRevenge channel, where you'll hear stories about people getting what they deserve in life. Guys, do I have a revenge-filled episode for you today? Of course, because it's called ProRevenge, right? In our first story, a Karen takes on the role of management and uses the original poster, OP, as her scapegoat. In the second story, OP's fiancé decides to have an affair due to his cancer diagnosis. In the third story, we'll wrap up with a shady landlord who sues OP over damages caused by a hurricane. Yikes! I hope you stay for these stories today. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more revenge tales in the future. If you enjoy this kind of content, let's dive in. This one's titled, Karen Gets Fired. I used to work in a marketing role in a government department. I was part-time and worked alongside a woman I'll call Karen, who was on a yearly contract. She had been there for 2 years and was very friendly with the department manager, which was why her contract kept being renewed. When my manager went on maternity leave, Karen was temporarily promoted to the management role. This caused a lot of upset in the office as there were several more suitable and qualified candidates who didn't get the chance to step up. As soon as Karen became my manager, everything changed. My workload increased, and as a part-time employee, I had to work incredibly hard to meet project deadlines. Suddenly, I wasn't being included in staff briefings on new projects, yet I was still expected to work on them. My department manager was acting strangely toward me and was always upset with me. This went on for months before I approached her to discuss my workload and other concerns. She sat me down and told me I needed to get my act together because Karen was having to pick up my workload, fix my mistakes, and so on. According to Karen, I was so lazy that I should be fired. I explained the actual work I was doing, but the manager took Karen's side, saying I was only assisting with parts of projects and that it was ridiculous for me to claim I was managing and completing so many projects on my own. So I started making mistakes. Simple things like adding incorrect briefs for designers, omitting prices, including wrong budgets, or setting deadlines that were 2 days off. Karen started getting pulled aside by various managers, who asked why she was making so many errors. That's when I knew for sure she was passing off my work as her own. She called me in for a meeting and exploded at me, so I walked out. She began yelling and complaining about me to teammates, calling me lazy. My friends in the office started telling me what was happening. One friend told me that Karen was online for an average of 5 hours a day, planning her upcoming wedding in Spain and using the office phones to make international calls to wedding planners. He could see her screen and couldn't believe how unproductive she was while I was working tirelessly. So, I decided to skip talking to the managers and went straight to HR. I told them to have IT monitor her internet usage and outgoing calls. I said I could prove she was a good-for-nothing employee who was relying on me. I provided email trails and project documents I had completed, which she had then taken and saved as her own. 2 weeks later, Karen was called to HR and told that her contract would not be renewed. She was given 1 month's notice. She told everyone it was due to budget cuts. My department heads brought me in for meetings to apologize and commend me for my excellent work, and I got a promotion. I left a couple of months later. If they had believed me in the first place, I wouldn't have endured so many months of stress and anxiety. OP did the right thing by leaving that workplace. It seems like a very toxic environment that played favorites. I have a bunch of Karens at my work too. They don't do their jobs, blame others for mistakes, and spend all day shopping online. This one's titled, Wife Leaves Me Because I Have Cancer. My fiancé and I dated for 4 years, and I thought we had a great relationship. We were both well-established professionals who owned homes in the same neighborhood, each with a daughter at home. Her daughter was 11, and mine was 16 when we met. We had planned to get married, build a house, and raise our daughters together. We started planning the house because she had recently been diagnosed with a neurological disease that would eventually require her to use a wheelchair. During the planning stages, I began doing landscaping and construction projects on her home to increase its resale value. In total, I invested roughly $30,000 into the home, running everything through my side construction business for tax, permitting, and resale purposes. We had a contract stating that payment would be made upon the sale of the home. I produced invoices for each project but never pushed for payments because of our agreement. 6 months later, we were looking at properties to develop and finalizing drawings for the new home when I began feeling ill. I couldn't eat, was constantly vomiting, and noticed blood in my stool. My abdomen looked swollen, which was odd because we both ate healthily and went to the gym every day. I went to the doctor and began having tests done. During this time, my fiancée started experiencing minor cognitive issues, and the stress of her job was worsening her condition, so she took a $20,000 per year pay cut and moved to a less demanding position in her company. After about a month of tests and a biopsy, I was diagnosed with a golf ball-sized tumor in my stomach and needed to begin chemotherapy. The treatments made me extremely ill. My fiancée was helping around my place on weekends and staying over more often, to the point that she and her daughter were at my home more than theirs. I suggested we put one of our houses on the market and move in together until the new house was built. I had great supplemental insurance and a long-term illness plan, so coupled with the sale of our houses, we would be financially comfortable, easing the stress on her. Shortly after this discussion, she became extremely distant. Her daughter stopped hanging out with mine, and she made excuses to avoid spending time together. She stopped driving me to treatments and no longer stayed over. Then she dropped a bombshell in a text that will forever be burned into my memory. "I love you, but I can't see myself taking care of someone who's sick in the long term. I don't think we should see each other any longer." It broke me, I won't lie. This was the first woman I had opened up to and planned a life with since my wife died. However, I tried to be mature about it. I forced myself to understand her position and accept what I couldn't change. The next day, I calmly gathered her things, packed them neatly, loaded them into my truck, and took them to her house to leave on the back porch while she was at work to avoid any awkward exchanges. As I walked to the back porch, I saw her in the living room, naked, with a man she had introduced to me as a lifelong friend. I had dined and vacationed with this man and his girlfriend. I never spoke of the incident with her and simply texted her later, explaining that I would leave her things on my side porch for her to pick up at her convenience. 8 or 9 months later, I learned from his now ex-girlfriend that they had broken up because he confessed to sleeping with my fiancée, starting around the time we were finalizing the house drawings. By then, I had finished chemo and radiation and was feeling healthier. While going through neglected paperwork, I found a file containing $32,680 in unpaid, long overdue invoices, which I promptly sent to my attorney to begin lien proceedings on her home. It turned out I acted just in time because she was about to put her house on the market. With interest accrued over 19 months and attorney fees, the invoices were substantial. After settling her mortgage and the invoices, she was left with roughly $10,000 from the sale. She likely had to back out of purchasing another home and moved in with her oldest daughter and 2 grandchildren. She also had to leave her job and begin receiving disability. I ran into her about a year ago, and she looked as if she had aged 20 years and was in the wheelchair we had discussed. We chatted cordially but briefly, and I excused myself. A week later, she called to apologize for leaving me the way she did. I was polite but kept it short, thanked her for calling, and hung up. She continued texting for several weeks until she asked if I could ever see us rekindling what we had. I replied, "I can't see myself taking care of someone so sick in the long term. Remember that box on your back porch? Did you think your lifelong friend brought that over from my house? Good luck to you. Goodbye." For those wondering, OP has been cancer-free for 2 years now and is living a very happy life. His fiancée, however, went from being a marathon runner to being wheelchair-bound in just 8 years due to her disease. With that said, I wish both of them the best life possible. Let me know in the comments below if you think she got what she deserved. This one's titled, "Landlord Suing for Hurricane Damages." I lived in Florida about 10 years ago, where I met my partner. Shortly after we met, we moved in together due to my less-than-ideal living situation, renting a room from a friend who was so addicted to opioids that she could barely function. We found a nice 2-bedroom house owned by an elderly couple who lived a few blocks away. Everything was fine at first, but we found cockroaches after moving in, which was shocking since I'm extremely clean and had never dealt with roaches before. When we told the landlords, they insisted they were not roaches but palmetto bugs and refused to call an exterminator. Bad sign number 1. Then a hurricane hit. It was only a category 1 or 2, I don't recall exactly, but it caused substantial damage to the roof and a lot of water got inside. Being new to the area, we didn't know how to prepare, and the landlords only told us to lower the hurricane shutters, so that's all we did. Soon after, mold started growing on our walls, especially in the laundry room. I reported it to the landlords, who told us to wash it down with bleach water. We did, but the mold kept coming back, requiring constant cleaning. When we complained, they said that's just life in Florida. They also came to look at the roof and from the yard told us, "You two are strapping young men. You can go up there and fix it. Just let us know when you're done." Then another hurricane, again a category 1 or 2, blew through. This time, windows broke during the storm, and since the roof still wasn't repaired or even tarped from the last storm, our carpets and furniture were soaked. Black mold appeared again, not just on the walls but on the carpets and furniture too. I spent days outside with our dog, and we slept in my partner's office. The landlords again told us to clean it with bleach water and claimed the damage was our fault because we didn't prepare well and hadn't fixed the roof ourselves. So, we called the city, and an inspector came by. He was shocked at what he found. Black mold all over the carpets and walls, a booming roach population, and a roof that clearly needed repairs before the storm. While the inspector was inside, the landlord approached me at the open door, ranting about how we better have repaired the roof and how they were going to charge us for all the repairs, carpet replacements, and mold removal. Then the city worker came around the corner, asked if he was the owner, and, when he said yes, informed him that he was condemning the house because it was uninhabitable. He added that it wasn't our responsibility as tenants to make or pay for repairs and recommended that we be released from the lease. I've never seen an old man wobble away so fast. Later that night, his wife called, raising a storm about how she was suing us for damages, how we weren't getting any money back, and so on. She also admitted to removing the condemned and danger signage from the door because it was embarrassing for people who knew it was their property. But she made a mistake. She sent us a strongly worded letter claiming we were taking advantage of the elderly, that all damages were our fault, since we didn't do repairs, that she wouldn't release us from the lease, and that she would hit us with multiple lawsuits. We contacted the inspector, who returned to the house to replace the signage. We turned over the letter, and he laughed, saying he knew exactly how to handle it since he saw this kind of thing all the time after hurricanes. He also said that if they sued, he would testify in our favor, because what they were doing was highly illegal. About a week later, we got a very pleasant call from the landlady saying we were such wonderful tenants that she was refunding our security deposit and that she was graciously letting us out of the lease without pursuing any charges. She even offered to help us find a new place. We later learned that the house had to be gutted and completely remodeled. We parked up the road with some takeout and watched the crew haul out the sheetrock and carpet. They could have saved thousands if they had just called a roofer and someone to handle the mold instead of making us call the city, which led to the house being condemned. I wish I could have been there when the inspectors confronted them the second time. The first time was glorious. I love the part about eating takeout and watching the repairs. This one's titled, "Never Mess with a Rancher." And a neighbor, my father had the ultimate revenge when I was a kid. My father had the ultimate revenge. I grew up on a horse ranch in Colorado. We had a long piece of property, about 80 acres, and we raised Missouri foxtrotters. We had lived there for almost 20 years when some folks bought a strip of property way at the back of our land. It was a strange plot of land, as it was very narrow and was sandwiched between the back of our fence and a busy county road. We were surprised anyone would buy it, actually, as it forced the house to be pretty close to the road. Well, we never met these new neighbors until one day my dad got a notice from a lawyer telling us that after having surveyed the property lines, our back fence encroaches on their property between 3 to 6 inches, depending on the spot along the fence line. These folks had never met us, never introduced themselves. Our first introduction was this legal demand. My father was a salt-of-the-earth kind of man, very kind but also very strong-willed. He called these folks, arranged a meet-up, and then tried to talk some sense into them. First topic, did 3 to 6 inches really matter that much? And why had they not come to us to talk it through? He even offered a number of different compromises. These folks were hostile from the get-go. They demanded he move the fence immediately or they would sue. Apparently, the law stated they had to put their house a certain distance away from our fence line, and they wanted to push it as far back from the road as they could, so they wanted that 6 inches very badly. I still remember when my dad got home from the meeting. He hung his hat up and shook his head. When he told my mom in his slow way, he said, "Well, looks like we got the kind of folks for neighbors that you don't ever want to have for neighbors." They sued and won, and we were forced to move the fence within 2 weeks. I say we because I was free slave labor, as all farm kids are in this kind of thing. All that fencing material and time was a big cost for my family, but we got the work done in early spring. Here's where the fun comes in. So, the new neighbors broke ground and built all through the end of winter into spring. The very next weekend after they moved into their house, Dad roused me out of bed, and we took a big truck into town to the lumber yard. I was extremely puzzled as we were loading up a bunch of fencing material and building supplies. We didn't have any big projects going on that I knew about, and I kept asking him what it was for, but he just told me what it was for. but he just told me to wait and see, with a devilish smile on his face. We built a pen and a small enclosure very near our back property line, directly behind the neighbor's new shiny house. The next day, one of our farm friends delivered 6 pigs to their new home. Dad insisted on feeding those hog's table scraps and all the things that would go into the composter, as well as some good, balanced hog feed to keep them healthy. Now, you may not know this, but the smell of pig excrement is directly related to what they eat. Table scraps make them smell bad, and I mean bad. I had to drive the four-wheeler back there every day to take care of them, and within a month, halfway there, and my eyes would start watering. It smelled so bad. When we mucked out the pen with the bobcat, we also made the pile right next to the pen. I can't even imagine how bad the smell was living in that house. The neighbors, of course, freaked out and again, without even trying to talk to us, went the legal route. They lost. The area was zoned agricultural, and my dad had done his homework to make sure he wasn't breaking any laws or regulations. The pigs were far enough from us and our other neighbors that it didn't bother anyone but the people that he wanted it to bother. Come fall, when winter came, we sold the pigs to slaughter, and my dad stacked up a bunch of building supplies next to the pen and let the neighbors know we would be expanding the operation in the spring. When they came out to scream at him, he smiled the whole time, speaking in his slow, steady way. The new neighbors sold their new house in January when the ground was frozen, so the new owners would not smell the pen. Though, as soon as the old neighbors were gone, we tore down the enclosure, spread the nasty stuff on the hayfield, and the new neighbors never had any bad smell come spring. They were also great neighbors and are still lifelong friends. Never mess with a rancher. This one's titled, Apartment Had a Broken Pipe. Apartment had a broken pipe the first day I moved in and ruined all my stuff. They wouldn't break the lease while I was living out of a hotel for weeks, so I bought their domain name and made them buy it back. I had just moved cross-country for a job with my girlfriend and found a nice apartment in the suburbs. The building was nice, staff seemed fine, and everything seemed in order. After unloading all of our boxes and organizing clothes on the floor, we decided to take a break and grab dinner. In the middle of our meal, I got a call from the building saying we had a fire in the apartment. Later found out the sprinkler pipe burst and triggered the fire alarm. I rushed back to find 4 to 5 inches of water and a massive hole in the ceiling that was leaking water everywhere. All of my stuff was ruined, including all my clothes, my piano, multiple computers, and electronics. Everything was gone. I did have renter's insurance, but found myself living out of a hotel until the repairs were made. Fast forward 2 weeks, I'm still living out of a hotel after the building claimed that they would have my place fixed in a week. I go in to inspect the place, and there's black mold all over the walls and ceilings. Obviously not a livable space, even after repairs. I'm communicating with the property manager, who keeps brushing me off and saying that everything will be fine and that it won't take much longer. I did mention breaking my lease, and she snaps, claiming I have no grounds to do that and they'll sue me if I do so. I work in digital marketing and real estate, actually. I have a follow-up meeting with her boss in an hour and decide to do some research into their URL. Their website name is the full name of the residence, which is pointlessly long. I find the .net available for purchase, as well as multiple iterations of shorter URLs, which presumably have higher search volumes. I spend $50 and buy them all up. Then, I call a lawyer buddy and talk to him about how to use language that will avoid sounding like extortion if I make them buy these back. I walk into the meeting and tell the GM that I want out of the lease immediately. I also say I want my time off work to be compensated for all meals, and given a few $1,000s for the inconvenience of living out of a hotel for weeks. She literally laughs in my face and tells me I have no legal grounds. That's when one of the most satisfying moments of my life happens. I slide over the who's information for all the URLs. She doesn't understand what she's looking at. I tell her I purchased these domain names for this property. I'm planning on building a website that explains my story and including links to your local competitors for free on the home page of the site. I let her know what I do for a living and hand over an SEO audit that I pulled for free on the internet of their current site and explain their poor performance. I let her know that I'll have this website outperforming them within a matter of months with links to competitive properties and my story at the top. Her face drops. She's white as a ghost. She has me wait while she gets her lawyer on the phone. I explain everything to the lawyer, being very, very careful with the language I use. We settle on $5,000 for all the websites, no bad reviews ever, and they break the lease. A week later, when the check comes in, I transfer all the domains to a very confused IT person who wants to know why I have the URLs of their company name. The lesson in all this is, buy good renter's insurance and don't let landlords push you around. This one's titled, Tear Open Our Driveway to Pour Concrete. Fine, you'll probably enjoy having to dig the concrete out of the ground twice. Not about me, but a guy I used to work with. He was a mountain of a guy, a huge Turk, but the kindest guy I've ever met. He'd do anything for people he liked. Nobody ever saw anybody get on his bad side until this one fateful day. As it happens, he was also our delivery driver and spent most days on the road in a semi, leaving before dawn and returning quite late, if at all. That day, our warehouse had a driveway large enough for him to pull the semi into and load and unload. The supermarket next door decided to do some renovations and expand. When they started construction, they started tearing up the brick parking lot and getting really close to tearing out our driveway. The boss runs out, tells them where our property line is, and is assured they won't cross into our property. Everybody goes back inside. Nobody worries until there's suddenly a raging bear Turk standing in the break room, shouting about how the driveway must have been torn up and he can't get his lorry in. We go out, and indeed the driveway's half missing, and there's a concrete building foundation poured in. Construction workers are nowhere in sight. The boss sends the supermarket manager an email message, and everybody goes home. The next day, we arrive to the site of very angry construction workers. Apparently, our delivery driver went back in the middle of the night with some bolt cutters and liberated about 30 shopping carts and stuck them into the wet concrete in various comical positions. Overnight, the concrete hardened, and the carts became difficult to remove. The construction crew brings in the jackhammers, and 4 days later, most of the concrete's gone, and they start preparing for another pour, this time leaving our driveway intact. The foundation comes out fine, everything's looking good. At that time, my boss shows up with the announcement that he had the survey done, and while they didn't tear open the driveway, a second time they were still closer to our property line than allowed, and he'd already filed a complaint to get the concrete removed. It took them another week of jackhammering to get it out. As a reader, I find these stories compelling for their raw, personal accounts of injustice and clever retaliation, though they also raise some ethical and emotional questions. Here's my take on each. Karen gets fired. This story is satisfying in its depiction of someone exposing a lazy, manipulative coworker through evidence and strategic action. The narrator's methodical approach, using email trails and IT monitoring to prove Karen's deceit, feels justified given the unfair treatment. However, the office's initial favoritism and failure to listen to the narrator highlight a toxic workplace culture, which makes the decision to leave understandable. It's a classic tale of comeuppance, but it also underscores how unchecked power dynamics can breed resentment and inefficiency. Wife leaves me because I have cancer. This one is heartbreaking and infuriating. The fiancé's betrayal, especially during the narrator's cancer battle, is gut-wrenching, made worse by her infidelity with a supposed friend. The narrator's restraint in handling the breakup maturely is admirable, and the lien on her house feels like poetic justice, especially since it was tied to a clear financial agreement. However, the story leaves a bittersweet aftertaste. While the narrator got some revenge, the emotional toll of such a betrayal lingers. The final text message, echoing her own words, is a sharp, cathartic moment, but it also shows how pain can fuel long-term grudges. Landlords suing for hurricane damages. This story exposes the negligence and greed of the landlords, who ignored serious issues like mold and roof damage while blaming tenants. The narrator's decision to involve the city inspector was smart, and the landlords backpedaling after their illegal actions were exposed is satisfying. The image of the narrator eating takeout while watching the house being gutted adds a humorous, almost cinematic flourish. However, it's frustrating to think about how tenants often have to fight so hard for basic habitability, and the landlord's initial refusal to act responsibly is a stark reminder of systemic issues in rental markets. Never mess with a rancher. This is a masterclass in petty legal revenge. The father's calm, calculated response to hostile neighbors, building a smelly pig pen right by their house, shows a deep understanding of how to hit where it hurts without breaking the law. The fact that he dismantled the pen after the neighbors sold their house proves it was purely strategic, not malicious. It's a feel-good story about standing up to unreasonable demands, though it also highlights how petty disputes over small measurements can escalate unnecessarily. Apartment had a broken pipe. The narrator's savvy use of digital marketing expertise to pressure the property management is brilliant. Buying the domain names and leveraging an SEO audit to threaten their online presence is a modern, creative form of revenge that avoids direct confrontation. The property manager's dismissive attitude and the subsequent panic when faced with the consequences are immensely satisfying. However, the story also underscores the vulnerability of tenants dealing with unresponsive landlords and the importance of renters' insurance. A practical takeaway: tear open our driveway to pour concrete. This one's a wild ride, with the image of shopping carts stuck in wet concrete providing a hilarious visual. The delivery driver's bold, middle-of-the-night retaliation is both reckless and effective, and the boss's follow-up with a survey to force another concrete removal adds a layer of calculated justice. It's a great example of standing up for your rights, though the destruction of property, even if temporary, feels like it skirts a legal line. The story's charm lies in its larger-than-life characters and the absurdity of the situation. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed this episode of our /ProRevenge. If you did, leave a comment and thumbs up. If you aren't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.